Once again, good afternoon. I will be discussing this time the Learning Support Aids Engagement Guidelines as outlined in Debate Order 32 Series of 2020, dated October 15, 2020. Well, I understand that all of you have read these guidelines already since this is posted in the DPID website and disseminated through the division memorandum, but for purposes of uniformity in implementing it, I decided to have this discussed now so that if there are queries or things that needs our decision, then we can have it immediately discussed or you will be guided accordingly. At any rate, if you have some questions or clarifications, I am suggesting that to maximize our time, just write it in our work chat in RO7 Board Mancom so that while the other officials, our assistant superintendents or our chiefs, will be discussing here their guidelines, I can also answer those queries or questions in the work chat. And later on, you can visit it and also for others to see and benefit the answers to your questions. At any rate, if we still have time here later, after all the discussions, then we may entertain or discuss your concerns. As you can see here, this is the title page of the Repeat Order 32. You will notice that it is entitled Guidelines on the Engagement of Services of Learning Support Aids. So definitely, it is not all about the hiring of teachers, but the engagement of services of learning support aids. Definitely not teachers, but learning support aids. And to reinforce, by the term itself, reinforce. Therefore, with or without the learning support aids, our implementation of the learning continuity plan must continue. But it's good if we have this learning support aids so that we can reinforce our implementation. And also, it is very clear this is in time of COVID-19 pandemic. So if it will happen that no more COVID-19 pandemic, it will follow that we have to cease using or engaging the services of our learning support. In paragraph 2 of this page of the defeat order, it is clearly stated that this is a mechanism, all about mechanisms, procedures, and standards that all our offices, including our schools, as well as the stakeholders, will use in the recruitment, selection, and engagement. So take note, this will start from recruitment, selection, and will end on the engagement. And this applies to all public elementary and secondary schools. So if private schools will ask you, then do not let them follow this guideline because this is for public elementary and secondary schools. However, I would like also to clarify that although it is stated in all public elementary and secondary schools, on the premise that particular or our schools are in need of LSAs. But if our schools do not need learning support aids, so therefore, uh, our schools will not use this Defeat Order 32 because they don't need to do the recruitment, selection, and engagement. Then, we should be guided also. These are the points for consideration in looking into whether we need learning support aids or no need of learning support aids. First is the school shall assess and determine whether they have learners who cannot manage independent learning, and especially those schools with learners with disabilities and special needs. Assuming that all the learners can do independent learning, so therefore the decision is no need for learning support aids, learning support aids. But if they have learners with or cannot manage independent learning, so the decision is they have to engage learning support needs. But the next is assuming they have learners who cannot manage independent learning, but what if they have household member or responsible adult who can manage or provide support, instructional support. So if that is the case, again, no need of learning support needs. Although they have learners who cannot manage independent learning, but that learner has a responsible adult or household member who can access, so therefore no need. And the third one is, what if the parents or the adult members in the family supposedly can provide support, however, they are working on full-time. So, kumbaga, alam nila paano magturo, mag-assist ng kanilang mga anak or kapamilya. However, may trabaho sila. So, they cannot provide the support. So, therefore, the decision is you will need learning support needs. So, these are basically some of the considerations on whether you will, no, whether you will have to engage learning support needs or just continue with your implementation of the learning continuity plan. And with this, let us take a look on the later portion that, again, as underlined there, this is to provide options and guidelines in engagement during the period of national public health emergency. If no more public health emergency, so we have to cease utilizing these learning support aids. And it is very clear they should be engaged to support learning delivery by collaborating and rendering assistance to teachers. So mind you, supervisors, you have to remind our schools that once they have learning support needs, aids, if they have already engaged the learning support aids, then those LSAs shall not be used as teachers. Because definitely, even if they are pastors, but since they are engaged not as teachers, but as learning support aids, so therefore, they should be there to provide or render assistance only to teachers. They should not act as teachers. This should be under the guidance of the teachers. So here, when you identify the services of those LSAs, if we will go back again on the analysis, the needs analysis, whether or not there is a need for LSAs. First is you have to go to look into your landscape, the educational landscape of that particular school. First, there is the enrollment. When we say enrollment, it does not refer only on how many are enrolled. But then again, there are a lot of measures or conditions that to look into in terms of enrollment. And again, let's go back to the previous page that you have to conduct thorough assessment or validation based on the enrollment and survey form that you have on what kind of enrollees you have. And another is, do you have resources that can be used to provide support? Because if you have enough resources, then maybe you will decide that no need for LSAs because the resources that you will be providing them is enough for them to learn even without LSAs. And another thing is the available workforce. Because I learned from some of the school heads that they said that because of the guidelines in DepEd Order 32, they don't need LSAs because they have enough teachers. Then for me, that is not the direct answer. If you have enough teacher to handle all the classes, but it doesn't mean that you don't need the LSAs. You have enough teachers, but do you have, the question now is, do you have excess teachers who can do works or functions as LSAs, who can do field or community visits, or who can do assistance of the learners in the respective locality or community? If none, then you need. Although your situation is you have enough teachers, but your teachers is enough only to do the regular task of a teacher, and you have no teacher to do the extra or another task in the field. and especially this time that it's too risky for our teachers to go in the different localities to provide those support to the learners. So therefore, this is one thing that you have to look into. Again, it is not enough that you will dissect that how many teachers you have. Let's say you have 10 teachers and you need only 10 teachers, so therefore you have enough. But is that enough teachers would mean that you don't need the LSA, or enough only for the regular task but you need LSA to do the additional task in the field or in the community. Then another is the connectivity and accessibility of the school and resources. If, for instance, your school is a very small school and all the learners are in just uh, in the surrounding community, so perhaps no need of LSA because uh, from time to time it's easy for the teachers to connect with them. No? So accessibility and connectivity is also part and parcel of the decision, especially for small school and in most cases for elementary, very small school, and learners are just living in the area near the school, then it's very easy for the teachers to assess them. But for areas that the residents are very far and it's difficult for the teachers to connect them, to reach out, and therefore you need EPC. When it comes to the community assessment, of course, you have to look into the community quarantine status of your area and the mobility of the community members. Is it, shall we say, risky or not for the teachers to go there? If it is too risky, then therefore, again, it might be one of the consideration that you need LSC so that the LSC coming from that area will be the one to handle the needs of the learners in that area. Even another aspect also is, are there COVID-19 cases in the locality? Uh, how about the LGU or the IATF or other agencies issuances? Will it warrant for the teachers to roam around? Or again, there is a restriction, so we need somebody who are from that locality to do the job. And so that's the time that again will be used as basis for your decision. And here there is what we call stakeholder relations. Uh, it means that if you have the point here is if you have a lot of stakeholders in the community who are willing to do the volunteer job and no need for you to enter into a formal engagement or contract, then why not use that situation? No? Instead of using your money or other resources to engage learning support aids, again, if you have good relation with the community, the stakeholders in the area, and they can provide, they can offer their free services, and no need to engage formal uh, engagement of these LSAs. And on the ICT, if you believe that you have enough ICT technology and your teachers has enough knowledge with ICT technology and the community can directly interact with the schools and the teachers using the ICT, and so therefore it's another situation that will guide you. If that is the case, that all the learners can interact with the teachers through the ICT, then no need for the learner support aids. And the last is, when it comes to community consideration, is what is the learning continuity plan operationalization or contextualization at the region or division. So speaking of division, again, my stand is I will not allow our teachers as of this time, to go around or to visit or to conduct house to house, no? To conduct house to house visit as of this time, that this office will not allow because there is no No, there is no clear indication and that our teachers are safe if we will allow them to do it. So therefore, that is again one of the considerations. Maybe later, if the guidelines about ATF, the LGUs, and the indicators, the health and safety standard indicators are favorable, then maybe that's the time that we will say it's safe for our teachers to do house to house. But as of this time, my point of consideration or my what we call this stand on this matter is we will not do it yet because we are not sure whether our teachers are safe or not if they will do house to house. Then we'll go back again to the aspect looking at your stated in your learners enrollment survey form that you will do the what we call as in-depth validation, in-depth assessment on the kind of learners you have based on the condition of the parents and based on the other situation like the distance, the transportation, and all other things that I have discussed it already a while ago as basis in our decision. And with that, after knowing the pros and cons, whether there is a need or no need for LSAs, now you have to consider if your decision is to have learner support aids. So the next move is you have to adjust your annual implementation plan. It's very clear there is a need to adjust your school annual implementation plan. And the principal will submit request for additional workforce, not as teachers, but that request is specifically to indicate that there is a need for learner support aid. But I would like also to emphasize, because it might be misunderstood by the principals that if they will request, the division office will provide. As of this time, we have not received any communication or amount that can be used to hire or to engage these LSAs. So this consideration on submitting request, this is just for the office to know that you really is in need and will start after having that request, it will trigger the start of the formal recruitment and selection process. Again, when you request, when your schools will request to have LSAs, you have to look into the different areas for consideration. Considering that basically our locality or even our LGUs or schools are not in the position to have extra funding source. So therefore, should we decide to have the LSAs, meaning our capacity or our financial capacity will warrant. Because if and when we subscribe to the idea of having the LSA, we cannot have them for free. No? Maliban lang kung sila mismo yung mga applicant magsabi na hindi sila tatanggap. But basically, I don't think so that they will not ask for even a little remuneration because they really need also, no? Especially in this time of pandemic. And when the school will submit to us, of course, basically we will do the validation also whether they really need, no, whether they really need those LSs that they want to. Of course, first is the looking into the teacher-learner ratio. As I mentioned a while ago, it doesn't mean that if your teacher-learner ratio is enough, it doesn't mean that you don't need LSA. But for me, what the point that we will look into is whether there is an excess teacher or no excess. Because if no excess teachers, therefore the school has a need for LSA to do the work in the community as learner support aid. And looking into also the vacant positions. Are there vacant positions that if filled up, they can use also as extra personnel to do the tasks of LSAs, or no more vacancies, so therefore LSA is needed. And again, go back to the learners and household profile. No need to discuss it further, but that is one area that we will look into once there is a request that is submitted to the division office. Now, my dear supervisors, these are the possible sources of funding if at your level or at the level of the schools they decided to have the services of the learning support aid. First, your special education fund. I would like to clarify that at our level, at the provincial level, we can no longer give you an assurance that we can recommend for learning support aids, because last month, I think it is last September, that the local school board of the province, headed by our governor, passed already a resolution that all those, shall we say, funds available of the SAF will be utilized, because the province will be establishing radio and TV station purposely for the use of our learners. So, meaning, as of this time, we can no longer give assurance that we can use SAF funds at the province level, because, again, as I said, we had already passed that resolution that those existing or remaining funds, if any, will be used for the establishment of radio and TV stations for the use of all learners in the province of whole. So, maybe SAF at your level, if you still have SAF. Second is, if your LGU has enough funds from their general fund, not from the SAF, then you can also lobby from your LGU, and maybe there is a MOA or an agreement between your end and the LGU on the matter. The third one is the MOA of the division. But then again, in our case in Bohol, we don't have enough MOA at the division level to support for this matter. In fact, there are even schools or implementing schools or operating unit schools that they have bigger MOA compared to our division office. So we have a lot of expenses incurred, so we cannot promise also that we can use our MOA. Specifically also that with the new law on maternity leave, we need more funds, because one teacher will do the leave. We need, if we will hire a substitute teacher, and that is for 105 days. So we need another funding for 105 days to be paid for the substitute. So perhaps on the fourth one, school MOA. So provided that all mandatory expenses are already considered. You know already what we mean by mandatory expenses, utility bills, those are considered mandatory expenses. After considering those, the school still has funds, then they can hire, no? They can engage local, what we call the learning support aids, using their MOA. At any rate, I think it was last Thursday that we received letter of obligation and documents that the regional office gave us additional MOE to some schools, no? So lucky for those schools identified. It is not the division who identified it, but based on the documents received by our budget unit, there are schools given additional MOE. Although it's quite small, but well, at any rate, it will still help our schools. For the elementary, I think it's more than 1 million given, but again, there is an identified schools to be given. For the junior high school, it's also more than 1 million. Medyo quite big for the senior high school because it's more than 4 million. So as I said, it will be perhaps for those schools given those additional MOE, if they don't need it for their regular needs this time, then they can perhaps use it to finance their engagement of learning support aids. And lastly, other source of funding. It's either from DepEd or from other organizations in your locality through ADAPA school. So if you have those existing partnership in your area and they are willing to finance, then well and good, because at least the salary here for learning support aid is not the same with the regular teacher, but it is only on based on the prevailing rate, the labor rate in our area. So the daily minimum wage in the area will be considered also as basis in engaging the services of the LSAs. Now, let's take a look closely on the job functions and nature of engagement. For our learning support aids, it's very clear. Letter A, it starts with the word assist. So again and again, they will not be considered as regular teacher, but first is you have to assist the teachers in the production and reproduction of modules and other activity materials. Distribute and retrieve from learners activities and other exercises. Monitor and track learners' accomplishment based on the weekly home learning plan. Clarify any difficulty or confusion that learners may encounter. So considering that they are there in the community, they will be engaging directly with the learners. So they will be the one to clarify any difficulty or confusion. And they will they will not be the one to directly make any what we call this explanation if they cannot do it, but of course they have to coordinate with the subject teacher for that particular area. Then guide the learners and parents in the observance of prescribed protocols, and they will guide also the learners and the parents in establishing routines and procedures that you have perhaps discussed already with the parents and the learners prior to the start of the school year. And you have to monitor and track the learners' accomplishment and timely submission, document and keep records of learners' progress, help the teachers in determining the need for intervention. So they are there. From time to time, they will inform the teacher of that particular child what intervention strategies or measures needed. Communicate and explain with the learners the task, coordinate and communicate with the parents or guardians on periodic feedback of the learner's progress as prepared by the teachers. So the feedback, the progress feedback must come from the teacher, and it will be the learner support aide who will coordinate and communicate this to the learners and the parents. And of course, they will comply with the laws, policies, and the rights of the children. It's very important. It's very basic that they are hired as learner support aides. There must be some restrictions, specifically when it comes to the implementation of child rights or child rights policies, protection policies, and perform other tasks and functions related to the teaching and learning process. But then again, definitely, they should not act as if they are already a permanent teacher, but they should act as support to the permanent teacher. And here, it's very clear also that when you engage them, they should be engaged either through contract of service or job order in line with the directives or circulars of the Civil Service Commission. And they should be engaged at least 6 months, but not extend beyond the end of the school year. And they shall receive remuneration or compensation amount which shall not be below the minimum wage rates in the area, the prevailing wage rates. And of course, they will render services as learning support aid, again through contract or job order, 8 hours a day for 5 days, or total of 40 hours. So Meaning, if they will be working Monday to Saturday, then it is not 8 hours per day. Because again, at least if 5 days, 8 hours per day, but if it will be stretched to beyond 5 days, then as long as it will be 40 hours a week. And here, it is repeated, they shall work together and in collaboration with the teachers and may directly report to the teachers. Or if not, directly under the supervision of the school principal. No, it is clearly stated here, regardless of the source of funding for remuneration. Even if it is funded by the stakeholders or funded by the LGU, but the direct supervision should be with the regular teacher or with the school head. Uh, the work arrangement shall be determined by the school head in consultation with the teacher and the learner support aide. The school shall adopt alternative strategies and remote modalities. So, even if they are learner support aid, but still, whatever alternative work arrangement adopted by the school, it still be applicable to this learning support aids. Attendance and performance monitoring shall be guided by the existing guidelines on it. So though with the alternative work arrangement, performance appraisal shall be done by the school head as waiter, and the learning support aid shall observe standards of professional and personal conduct. Now, on application and selection process, SDOs will, with identified need to engage learning support aid, shall contact, coordinate with, and offer the position to existing teacher applicants. So, my dear supervisors, please be guided of this. Inform your principals that the first thing, if there is really a need for learning support aids, the first thing that you have to look into is the RQA. So, considering that we are not yet done with the RQA for 2020-21, but if based on your data, these applicants are have applied and part already of the current school year ranking process, although we are not yet done because of the central office failed to give yet the APT, but in that case we can use it. We will use okay, under letter A, remaining teacher applicants in the registry who are not given permanent or provisional appointment, and teacher applicants who did not meet the cut-off score per existing. So, as at this time, we will consider it as under letter B because again, we are not yet done with the RQA, but that will be our basis. No need to look for another applicants if they are still available. In fact, also for the existing RQA 2019-2020, we had already the approval from our director that we will use it in filling up our vacancies and new items until such time that our RQA for 2020-2021 will be finalized. Because again, until now, we are waiting for the Bureau of Educational Assessment to give the English proficiency test. So, should there still be available position, after considering the RQAs, then that's the time that you will call for the recruitment and selection. So, kumbaga, again, hindi na kailangan ng selection process na bagong selection process kung meron pa kayong mga aplikante based sa inyong RQA o kahit yung RQA pa natin hindi na matapos, pero sa record ninyo, applicant sila ninyo, so they can be considered. Sila ang titingnan ninyo kung sino at ilan sila na pwedeng gagamitin ninyo o engage as learning support aid. And just look at it, the minimum qualification, just in case wala na kayong mga qualified teacher applicants, so isipin ninyo kahit senior high school graduate or at least college, 2 years college level, then pwede siya maging LSA. Walang kailangang training, walang kailangang experience, walang kailangang eligibility. Basta 21 years old until 59 years old lang. And preferably resident of the community barangay where the school is located. This is very basic kasi ayaw natin na magpunta siya sa ibang barangay kasi it's too risky. baka siya pa maging courier ng COVID doon. So, kung maaari, hanggang dyan lang sa community siya, ang maging kliyente niya, mga learners in his or her own locality or community. And other preferred qualification, in our case, we will not add other qualifications, but we will just use what the existing qualifications set by the central office. And here, it's very basic. Applicants will submit documentary requirements, although it is stated here addressed to the SDS, but it doesn't mean that these documents will be submitted to the division. It is just part of protocol that it is addressed to the division through the SDS, but those documents will be submitted only at the school level. The same with other uh, applicants before, they will submit the letter with PDS, with proof of residency, because we want to establish that they are really from that area, barangay clearance, and other documents required. No, you will require photocopy of eligibility if they are eligible, but if they are only high school graduates or college level, then no, do not ask for those. No, so only those applicable documents that you need to ask. And of course, very important is that letter F, omnibus certification of authenticity and veracity. Use the existing omnibus certification that you currently use for the applicants and the teachers. Use it also in filling those for those LSAs. And the applicant assumes full responsibility. Of course, because they will sign those omnibus certification, it is presumed that they are assuming that full responsibility and accountability in assuring that the documents submitted are valid and authentic. And here, my dear supervisors, take note that there should be an existing or will create a school screening committee, and the school screening committee shall be chaired, of course, by the school head, elementary, junior, or senior. It is chaired by the school head, but for elementary, it will be composed by, aside from the school head, 4 teachers, the PTA, or the SGC, and if it is an IP community, 1 member from the IP. But if not, then basically there will be 6, no, in the school screening committee. The first is the school head, the second, third, fourth, and fifth are the 4 teachers, and the sixth one from the SGC or PTA. For the junior high school, if it's a big junior high school, members are the department head and 3 other teachers, and the same is GC or PTA representative and IP if it is an IP community. But then for school junior high school, just follow the same setup for the elementary: school head, 4 teachers, is GC or PTA, and IP if an IP community. For senior high school, it's very clear: the members, the teachers of the area, you need the LSA, and 3 other teachers, and the SGC or the PTA. And the same, are more or less, the elementary, junior high school, and senior, more or less the same composition. It's just a matter of saying head teacher or department head if it is a big school, having those department head or head teacher. And also, it is stated that in that guidelines, if it is a small school, then the school head of the cluster school will serve as the head of the school selection committee. And here, the ECC shall be identified by the school head, name of which shall be transmitted to the division office through the HRMO for the issuance of designation order. So I suggest, my dear supervisors, do not let your school submit one by one. I suggest that the district shall consolidate. No, you will just make a template that the first column perhaps are the name of the school, then the second to the 7th column will be the names of the members, the chairman and members of the school selection committee, then below recommended by the district supervisors, and then validated by our division review committee and approved by the school division superintendent. So meaning I will be dealing only with 56 recommendations, not the 1,000 plus schools, no? So do not do it, do not let your school submit one by one, but again, have one template only for the submission of those SEC recommended for the designation, issuance of designation order. I think no need to discuss what the SEC will do. Of course, they have their task is to evaluate, to assess, and do the process of recruitment and selection. One thing only that we have to emphasize here, if it's too risky for face-to-face and it's too risky to submit or to receive hard copies of documents, then let the schools accept it through submission of e-copy, online submission of documents. In that way, the school is safe for COVID, no? COVID cases. But if it is not feasible, all you have to do is to ensure lang that the documents received and the schools or the teachers assigned to receive is safe while receiving those documents. Here, take a look on the lower portion. It is in bold. The conduct of the assessment and selection may be delegated insofar as practicable to the SEC, results of which shall be subject to the review and validation of the DRC. So here it is now, because there is what we call school selection committee and there is what we call division review committee, wherein in this case the division office through the SDS is given the discretion to decide whether the assessment and selection shall be done by the school selection committee or through the division review committee. In item 21, it is stated that selection process to be conducted by the division review committee. But below, it is stated the conduct of the assessment and selection may be delegated insofar as practicable. So in our case, it is practical that it will be delegated to the school selection committee. We cannot do it at our division level that we will let the admin officer and other members of the DRC to review and to do the recruitment selection for the 1,100 plus schools. It's impractical. So, as far as practicability is applied, therefore, again and again, with this orientation or discussion that I am doing now, please take note that assessment and selection of LSAs in DepEd Bohol is delegated to the school selection committee. However, we will be releasing a formal memorandum on this effect, and I am assigning this one to our assistant superintendent in charge for curriculum, Dr. Casiana Caberti, to do the preparation of the memorandum detailing or giving the instructions, specifically those specific instructions that I am telling you now, specifically on the conduct of the assessment and review of the documents. Now here in the evaluation of documents, there are 4 aspects that must be looked into. Unlike this is to take note also that the selection, recruitment and selection is not the same with the selection of regular teachers. There are only 4 aspects that must be looked into here. First is document review. Second is panel interview. Third is learning, facilitation, and demonstration. Fourth is examination or written examination. But take note, the third one and the fourth one, there is what we call optional. Optional. So therefore, this is another decision-making area that for DepEd Bohol, my dear supervisors, we will focus only on document review and panel interview. So who will do the document review and panel interview? It is the school selection committee. We will no longer apply the demonstration and the written examination because these are optional. As clearly stated, optional. So therefore, in our case, my decision, we will not apply it because it's too difficult to do the demonstration and to do the written examination. At any rate, no need for them to be asked to demonstrate because they are not irregular teachers. They are just supporting or assisting our teachers. No? It is stated here in 23, paragraph 23, that the DRC or ECC shall implement strategies on how to conduct interview and other areas. But then again, do not be confused. Tell your principals, do not be confused, because the decision of the division office, it is delegated. The document review and panel interview is delegated to the school selection committee with, of course, the technical assistance of the district supervisors. That is why you are here, called to this online conference, so that you can provide technical assistance to them. No? Here again, in paragraph 24, it is the responsibility of the DRC to finalize assessment and selection report, Annex A. But then again, I would like to clarify, since it is delegated to the school selection committee, so this task now is passed on or delegated to the school selection committee. So it will be the school selection committee who will do the finalization of assessment and selection report, of course, subject only to the validation by the review committee. It is not the division review committee in our case who will do the finalization, but they will just do the validation. Okay, here, so guided by the assessment and selection report and recommended by the DRC, so the assessment result is there already, finalized by the school selection committee, validated by the DRC. Then, with the approval of the SDS, you can do now the engagement, meaning you can proceed now with the conduct or the signing of agreement or the contract. No? So you can use the template provided, Annex A and Annex B. Our sole selection committee can use it, but perhaps with some modification on how to use those templates. Of course, there is capacity building, another point of entry of the supervisors, the district supervisors, that of course after engaging them, you need to provide, you need to capacitate those LSAs. And you need to ensure that these LSAs will follow strictly or observe strictly the health and safety protocols. DepEd shall issue amendments or supplementary guidelines to cover our personnel may be required to conduct home visitation. So that is why I am telling a while ago that as of this time, my office will not advise our teachers to do home visitation, because it is clearly stated in DepEd order, in this DepEd order, paragraph 30, that DepEd shall issue amendments or supplementary guidelines of DepEd order 14 to cover all personnel who may be required to conduct home visitation. So pending availability of this amendment, so therefore we will not give direction or instruction to our teachers to do individual home visitation. So we will just have this, our learning support aides to do this task in the community, but later on, if there is an amendments or additional guidelines coming from our central office allowing our teachers, then that's the right time that we do it. Other incentives, this refers to, of course, first is the salary that they will get if they will be hired as LSA, but at the same time, it is clearly stated that this can be credited, considered as credit points as relevant experience once they auto-apply plantilla items in DepEd. It is stated there, plantilla position. So it may not be a teacher position, but if they will apply for other position in DepEd, if they are qualified, then they can use it as credit points for relevant experience. And then, please be guided that once you utilize, you hire them as LSA, do not remove them from the existing RQA. Especially again, as I told you, that we have already clearance from our regional director that while we have no EPT for this school year RQA, then we are given the authority to continue using the existing RQA for 2019-2020. So if they are there in that RQA, do not erase them because they are already LSA, because their hiring their services as LSA will not bar them from getting permanent appointment if there is vacancy that will occur. So here, this is reportorial. We will not discuss this in detail this time, maybe in some other time. This is now Annex A. The school selection committee will use in filling up while they do the selection process. So in this case, they will look into the column 1, name of applicant, the column 2, basic information, the next column, qualification, and on the assessment result, they will focus only on interview because again, as I said, we will do away with learning facilitation or demonstration and written exam. And so on the third to the last, DRC recommendation, here, although it is stated DRC recommendation, but since we delegate it to the SSA, so they will be the one to recommend. So ang ibutang lang nila diha is recommended or not. Okay, meaning, for instance, nung doon na sila napulo ka LSA applicant, pero 5 ra ang ilang gikinahanglan, so therefore, ila indicate diya, of that 10, kinsa ang 5 nga ilang i-recommend. So, if there are, again, if there are 10, then they need only 5, then they will indicate only those 5 with the comment recommended. And then the fund source, in the last column, that is now the column that the SDS will sign. Meaning, if I will sign there, meaning I am okay with your recommendation. But what I said here or a while ago that maybe we need to modify, in this Annex A, since it is the school selection committee who will do the selection, so below in this template are the names and signatures of the school selection committee, followed by the names of the DRC as validators. Then after that will be the name of the SDS as the approving authority. On here, the division review committee, this is part B. This is minutes of deliberation. So it's very clear. If you look at the lower portion there, try to read. Note, the school screening committee shall prepare the minutes of deliberation template should the assessment and selection process is delegated to the SEC. So it's no longer the division review committee who will use this, but it is the school selection committee since it is delegated to them. This is the template. It is part of the DPID order. You consider in the DPID order as Annex B. You can use it when you do the signing of contract. And there is Annex C. This is the learning support aid complement. This will be filled up. This is no longer part of the job of the schools and district. This is at the region and division level.
And so this is now the summary of my discussions on DPID Order 32, Series of 2020. And we are contextualizing it in DPID Bohol situation. So here, it is clearly stated here in my slide that the school head with the technical assistance of the district supervisors or the acting district supervisors shall do the following. First, it should start with the profiling of learners that needs LSAs. Not all our learners will be needing LSAs. So you know already what are those learners, even if probably there are learners that are not or that needs what we call this somebody, but if there need somebody to assist them, but if their parents or relatives or anybody can assist those learners, so therefore they will not be included for those learners that needs LSAs. Second is, if you know already how many LSAs needed, then you have to determine your existing workforce or the teachers available. As I said a while ago, if you have only enough teachers to do the regular task as a teacher, so therefore basically you need LSA because the LSA is support to the teachers. So these are the personnel or the workforce who will do the work or task in the community or to directly assist the learners. So that is why you have to determine whether you have excess teachers who can do the task as LSA, or you have only enough teachers who are there to do the regular tasks. So therefore, you need LSA. The third one is you have to identify the number of LSAs because this will be the source or the input to number four or your funding source. Once you know how many LSAs you need, you have to look into do you have the funding source. Let us say, for instance, you need 10, but your funds is enough only for 5. So therefore, you will not go for 10, but you will go for 5 only. But at least you have the data that how many is needed, but how many can be funded. For number 5, after having those things, 1 to 4, the next thing to do is you have to request authority to engage LSA. So ask authority from us, from the division office, from the office of the superintendent. The school heads will do it with the proper endorsement of the district supervisors, that they will be asking authority that they can hire or they can engage services of the learning support aides. And if they have already the authority, the next one is they will engage, they will sign a contract between the school heads and or whoever is funding it, LGO, and the one hired or engaged. If you have existing applicants in your RQA, or even those not in the RQA but considered applicants, existing applicants, but were not able to reach 70, still they can consider they can be considered for engagement as LSA. So no need for hiring, no need for recruitment or selection if you have existing in the RQA or those existing or considered rank but did not meet the 70 cutoff. However, if still you need more, let us say for instance you need 10, but the available in the RQA or those identified uh, considered existing applicants are only 5. So therefore, if you need 10, still lacking 5. So that is now the time that you will proceed to the next step or procedure. And that is the number 7, that you will, the school head again will request authority to issue a memo or call for application duly recommended by the PSDS and approved by the SDS. That memo or call for application announcing that the school still needs 5 more uh, interested people or applicants for to become LSA. Then after that, once you have the school head has that authority, you will start receive documentary requirements. And as stated in the deputy order, if possible, it should be online submission, no face-to-face if necessary. No, if necessary. So it depends on the situation and the locality. The next one is once you have the documentary requirements, then the school selection committee shall conduct assessment and selection. I have to be clear that for DepEd Bohol, we will do away with the other two assessment, the demonstration and even on examination, but we will focus only on the first two, document review and panel interview, because this is allowed based on the guidelines that the other two is optional. Second to the last is once they have already those final selection, then they will recommend the most qualified. Again, why the most qualified? Because, for instance, they need 5, but in the applicants, the existing applicants who submitted documents 7, and so if they found out that 7 are all qualified, but who of the 7 are considered most qualified, so they will just recommend 5. They will submit it to the Division Review Committee for validation and to be approved by the SDS. Again, let us clarify this, that it is no longer the Division Review Committee who will do the task of document review and panel interview, because in the DepEd order, uh, it is allowed for the SDS to delegate the task to the school selection committee. And lastly, this is the execution upon task. Of course, the supervisors are expected to provide technical assistance on how contract, although the contract sample is in the debit order, but how to do it, especially on who will finance, is it from in the school, from the school MOE, or from your PTA, or from your local government units, or from other stakeholders. So that is why the contract more or less shall be modified based on who finance on the contract of the services, and whether it will be for how many months. But then again, let us be clear that in the guidelines, at least 6 months. So, dili mo minus sa 6 months. At least 6 months, pero dili pod mulapas sa paghuman sa school year. So, kay mahuman mang school year, June 11 of 2021. So, mo na pinakataas na contract up to June 11, 2021. Because if you will read thoroughly the Depid Order 32, giingon dito, nga possibly i-extend pa ang pag-engage og LSA depending on the situation, on the whether na pandemic, then it might be that our central office will issue additional communication allowing us to extend. But as of this time, the Depid Order 32 is for school year 2020-2021. I think that is all, and as I said at the start, if you have some questions, please post it in our work chat for RO7 Ballman.com, so that after me, while the other discussants are doing their discussions here with you online, I can browse it there and I can answer it one after the other, and post it also in the work chat RO7 Ballman.com. So later you can go over it. But at the again, if we still have time after all the discussions, then we might discuss some of those concerns here, so that before we will depart with this virtual conference this afternoon, everything is clear, especially on this aspect, on the engagement of learning support aid. With that, I should say good day, everyone.